Good morning. The debate is heating up over a proposed law that would change the national standard for laying hens in the cages they live in. Last month, the bill found its way to the halls of Congress. The law is based on a proposal written by the Humane Society of the United States and United Egg Producers, a trade association, and it seeks to do away with conventional cage systems. Now, two key leaders in Congress, Ag Committee Chairman Frank Lucas and Colin Peterson of Minnesota, have resisted moving the bill into committee. Recently, Peterson talked to me about this kind of push from activists.
When the consumers see these things on TV, they say, oh my God, this is terrible. But they don't realize that if we make these changes, they're going to double or triple the price of eggs, and they're going to consolidate the industry down to 12 people that are going to run the whole egg industry, and they're going to put all the little guys out of business.
Though the law is written for laying hens, there are concerns in the livestock sector that it will eventually lead to other animals. We have team coverage of this issue, and we begin with Michelle Rook, who joins us with the objections being raised by beef and pork producers.
Livestock groups, including the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, are opposing federal legislation that would mandate on-farm production practices for egg producers.
There was a deal struck July of last year between HSUS and United Egg Producers to pursue federal legislation to dictate production practices for laying hens. And that's really where NCBA's membership has great concern, because currently there are no federal laws dictating production practices.
Absolutely opposed to that. This makes absolutely no sense. Their sole business of being in their organization is to put us out of business.
HSUS already cut a deal with the livestock industry in Ohio on animal welfare practices, and they've been eyeing other states like Nebraska.
In Nebraska, we're very concerned about HSUS. They came into our state a little over a year ago. They have a director hired there now, and our governor and even the Nebraska cattlemen have come out and talked to them about we've raised our cattle. We've got the safest food products in the world.
Under the agreement, HSUS agreed to stop pursuing state ballot initiatives regarding egg production practices if the United Egg Producers would work with them to pursue federal legislation mandating increased cage sizes. However, NCBA officials say they won't deal with HSUS.
When you try and negotiate with somebody that wants to put you out of business, you have a no-win situation. So we are absolutely opposed to doing any conversations of anything at all with HSUS.
Cattle industry officials say they're concerned about the precedent striking any deal with the Humane Society of the United States on animal welfare could have on livestock production practices going forward.
This could be a great Pandora's box get opened up if this thing would happen to be passed into law.
In fact, the legislation could create a one-size-fits-all model for animal management and welfare.
This bill that has been brought forward with the egg producers could set precedents to where if this would just by chance happen to pass, they would come back and probably revisit other phases of the livestock industry and try to work something out there.
United Egg claims they struck the deal to avoid having animal welfare rules imposed on them, but cattlemen say they shouldn't have pressed forward without consulting the rest of the industry.
We have got to make sure that when we're dealing with HSUS, that we're dealing with them as a team.
People have to remember this is a group who does not support eating animals, so we don't have a common interest at the end of the day.
But says the legislation won't improve animal health or care, and mandating production practices will result in further costly and burdensome regulations being placed on America's food producers.
So as an industry, producers are the ones that know how to handle animals and are the best suit ones to actually talk about animal welfare, not a group like HSUS that's agenda driven.
I'm Michelle Rook reporting for Ag Day.
Thanks, Michelle. Ag Day's national reporter Tyne Morgan joins us now. And Tyne, you just talked exclusively with the farmer who helped create this legislation.
Yes, I did, Clinton. I went to Indiana farmer Bob Krause's operation to ask him about his decision to cross the traditional barrier and work with what many in agriculture consider an activist organization. From his perspective, stepping across the divide to work with HSUS may not be popular, but he feels it was necessary.
Midwest Poultry Services has 7.5 million laying hens producing 1.5 billion eggs annually and employs 300 workers. It's not Bob Krause's operation that has caused controversy, but his work with the Humane Society of the United States.
I think everybody in animal agriculture has had a similar experience to ours with the Humane Society. What we've always felt is that the Humane Society doesn't want animal agriculture to exist, and if somebody wants your way of life to go away, It's hard to find any common ground with them.
With a handful of states already trying to outlaw conventional egg production by enforcing cage-free methods, Krause knew the fate of egg production was at stake, and something had to be done before it was too late.
That's an enormous issue if you can't freely move eggs from state to state.
So Krause put his personal feelings and past experiences aside to hash out a compromise between United Egg Producers and HSUS. But finding common ground took months of negotiations. In the end, they agreed to increase cage space to 124 square inches per hen.
The birds have almost twice as much space as they have today, so the cost of housing goes up quite a bit. And then you have to put in perches, nest boxes, foraging and dust bathing material. So there are just some additional expenses for this that we don't have right now.
And he says over the past 10 years, many producers have moved towards the stacked deck cages like these. And he says these can easily be converted into the new enriched cages.
Even though this is acceptable to the Humane Society, and we're glad about that, the reason the egg industry and egg farmers are supporting this is that it's very important for egg farmers. If it wasn't the right thing for egg farmers to be doing, then there wouldn't be a reason to be working with Humane Society.
Krause says even with over 20 co-sponsors of the bill, he knows some livestock groups are in opposition.
We're hoping that they can understand that this is something we need to do, and they're willing to at least stand by the sidelines.
And Krause said he wants to address a major concern for animal livestock groups who think this bill sets a negative precedent.
I don't believe it's the beginning of a slippery slope towards regulating activities on family farms. It's a very narrow, limited bill. It's extremely difficult to get it passed, and once it's in place, a question that comes up is how do you know it won't? They'll start off at 124 square inches, and next year they'll come back and demand 200 square inches and further on. But we'll be vigilant at watching over the bill once it becomes law.
Krause says he knows this move is more expensive and different than conventional production methods, but he feels it's a direction in which egg producers need to move.
So what about the price of eggs for consumers? Are those expected to go up?
You know, he did mention that eggs are a very price-sensitive product. So if they wanted to move in this direction, they need to be prepared to justify that added cost to consumers. But he says it's a production method which makes consumers comfortable in the food that they're buying.
All right, thanks, Tyne.